Hello, I'm Matt Guichard, and this is No Holds Barred. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the area of immigration law. We're pleased to have Erika Portillo here of the law firm Guichard, Tang, Portillo, and Garrett. Erika is a specialist in the area of immigration law, and we're pleased to have her. We're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to start asking some questions immediately of Erika. So, Erika, can you tell us a little bit about what government agency is responsible for immigration law in the United States?
It's the Department of Homeland Security.
All right.
It's the one responsible.
And specifically, is the Department of Homeland Security part of the Justice Department, or what department?
A part of the Justice Department.
Right. An issue comes up often when it comes to immigration judges and their authority. So oftentimes we think of judges with the Justice Department. Is it fair to say that the immigration judges are administrative judges rather than part of the justice?
Yes, exactly right. Administrative judges. Yes, judges.
All right. And well, what is the difference then?
The difference is that, there's a big issue that I would like to touch, that recently, because of the changes of administrations, the immigration judges are under the Attorney General rules, or oversee. The Attorney General oversees them. So whenever there is a change of administration, the policies change. So with that, that is significant because they are instructed to act in a certain way, so they are not completely independent. And what we are trying to do as immigration lawyers and Congress is to give an independent side to immigration judges, so they can be like regular judges, like in federal courts or in state courts. That they are independent when ruling. They are not dependent on the administration that is in the United States, either Republican or Democrat.
I see. So fair to say that our normal justices, district court judges, and that kind of thing in the federal government are independently appointed. They're independent judges. They make their own decisions, whereas in the immigration courts, the judges are actually appointed by and overseen by the Attorney General. So I understand. So potentially politics could then get in the way of a judge's potential ruling simply because his superior would be the Attorney General of the United States.
Yes, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, let's talk about immigration as a whole. Well, what are some of the issues that are of concern to you as an immigration lawyer with respect to our immigration rules and regulations right now?
Right now, as you know, we have a significant number of undocumented people, and sometimes people ask, or U.S. citizens ask, why are so many undocumented people? Why can they get a work permit, or why they cannot get come to the U.S. legally? So the problems that they face are one. It's very hard for them to come legally because they need a work permit or a visa to come to the U.S. legally. And the visas are very limited, and they cannot easily get them. So that is one of the things that why they don't come legally. The other thing is that when they are here, there are certain requirements that they have to meet to be able to get their permanent residence. For instance, a person comes to the U.S. illegally. They marry a U.S. citizen. After being in the United States for more than 1 year, after 1997, let's say they arrived in 2000, and they stayed in the United States for more than 1 year, they leave the country because their parent is sick in Mexico, for instance, and then they come back illegally again. What's going to happen when the U.S. citizen spouse tries to petition or file a petition in their benefit, they're not going to be able to get the residence just for the mere fact that they came illegally, they stayed for more than a year, left, and came back illegally. So they are not going to qualify for a waiver or forgiveness. and they will have a permanent bar. That's what we call it, a permanent bar. And that's why many people who are married to U.S. citizens, they never become residents because they have that permanent bar. And if that could only change, would help a lot of families and U.S. citizens to get their spouse a Social Security and permanent residence, and eventually citizenship.
Yeah, in looking at the statistics, it appears that actually there are more people, and I'll use that term, undocumented in the United States that actually came here legally than people who crossed the southern border illegally.
Yes, there's a significant number of Canadians and Brazilians and from other countries, but when they come with the visa, in some ways, it's better for the person because once they're here and they overstay the visa, then if they marry a U.S. citizen, they can become residents in an easier way. But yes, it's a significant number. There is a significant number of people coming with visa and overstaying their visa. So not all people came without documents. And obviously, if a person from Canada comes, they would never realize that the person doesn't have any documents, or they overstay the visa because they don't distinguish them. They only see Hispanics that as undocumented.
I see. Well, the fact of the matter is that we're hearing about people from Haiti, we're hearing about people from the Middle East, we're hearing about people from Ukraine. Whenever there is some turmoil in the world, it appears that people want to come to the United States. And one of the ways that we're hearing about it is crossing the border, either from Canada into the United States or from Mexico into the United States.
Yes, yes, for many countries, yes, they come. And also, excuse me, the U.S., when there is a crisis in a country, they give permits for the humanitarian visas for them to come to. So there is that relief. We saw this with Afghanistan, and also we are seeing this with Ukrainians, that they are also helping them to immigrate because they are in danger there.
So that's kind of a fast-track way of getting people into the United States, and our government sponsors that. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a humanitarian visa, yes.
So it's not all doom and gloom with respect to our immigration laws and practices.
No, no, there are a lot of benefits. People can come and stay legally, yes.
Let's just talk about kind of the different areas, in broad stroke, the different areas of immigration law. First of all, what you've practiced or you've practiced in the past. And so we'll start with that. Why don't you just talk about those areas?
Yes, there are different areas. So the family-based immigration is what I practice, and removal defense. So that's when somebody is arrested by ICE and is placed in removal proceedings. So that's it's a type of litigation. So that's when you go to court, you have witnesses, you have the a person arrested testify, and the family basis when somebody, let's say again, marriage, a U.S. citizen marries a person from another country and doesn't have any documents or came with a visa and they are here legally. I help them get the status to become residents and eventually become U.S. citizens. So that's what I do. But the other area of immigration is the employment base. So that is when a company wants to sponsor somebody. Work visa could be H-1B is for professionals. There are some visas also for temporary workers that you have seen in the fields. Usually it's very normal for Napa, for instance. They get the people to come to work in the vineyards. And also we have the investors' visas. So people who want to come and invest in a business, or they have $1 million and they want to come and get the residence. Those are the areas in immigration. Oh, one more is a person who's a victim of a crime. That's humanitarian visas that I also is one of my areas of expertise.
Yeah, why don't you give us an example? I know you've handled some of those cases. Can you just give us, without naming names, kind of an example of that kind of humanitarian case that you've done and your successes with them? Because you've had many successes with
Yes,
them.
and that is one of the visas that not many people know about, and that's very important for them to know. So it's when, for instance, a person who has been a victim of domestic violence. I had a very nice woman. She was from Guatemala, very sweet. She was married to this guy. He was very abusive to the point that he threw them out with the children, threw her out with the 2 children on the street. She was on the street. She called the police when he did that after hitting her. And she cooperated with the police, but that's one of the requirements, that the victim has to cooperate with the police. He was convicted. She was on the streets for a while. She worked very hard to get a place to live. And after a few years, she came to my office. I asked her about what had happened, the police report, and I was able to get her a U visa, which eventually will lead her to permanent residence. So that is I love those cases because you're helping people really that they need that benefit for the things that they have gone through.
Mm-hmm. So in different areas, for example, when you talk about cancellation of removal, can you describe? So in other words, and that woman you were just talking about, she was here, she was undocumented.
Yes.
And the only reason she came to the attention of the authorities was because she'd been abused by her husband. Was he also undocumented?
He was.
I see.
And that's a very good point that you say. So she was undocumented, and the fact that she approached the police, that didn't place her in removal proceedings because the police defends victims. So that's something that people should not be afraid of approaching the police because they will help them. On the other hand, if a person commits a crime, like the husband, so he was undocumented, he committed a crime, he was placed in removal proceedings because he committed domestic violence. Mm-hmm. So that's when they take him to court and the judge asks if he wants any relief or he wants to apply for any relief. But a person who has been convicted of domestic violence, as bad as he did, it was a felony. It's very likely that that person is not going to be allowed to stay because the United States protects victims of domestic violence and is very against perpetrators. So I'm very happy about that, even though I'm an immigration lawyer, then I'm a defense lawyer. I do not like the fact that a person can abuse another human being and being allowed to stay. So mm-hmm. The U.S. have that also, that we are not going to allow to stay people who are perpetrators and abuse, not only women. I have had men who were abused by their spouse. So that is another benefit that humanitarian visas or humanitarian reliefs that you were speaking about, or you asked me about, is another one that is VAWA, that is for a relief for people, not only women, but it started with women and expanded to men. They have been victims of a U.S. citizen or resident, so it's not undocumented. Mm-hmm. It's of a U.S. citizen of permanent resident. They can get a status too. They get residence and then citizenship. So I had a client who was being abused by his wife. She was constantly harassing him and telling him that he was going to call immigration, and also telling him that he was nothing because he was undocumented, and that if he left her, that she was going to take his kids away. He was very ashamed when he came. He didn't come to me because he wanted a relief. He came because he was afraid that now he had initiated the divorce proceedings, that his wife was going to take away his children. So that was the reason he came. And I said, no, you don't have to worry, but you can qualify to get your permanent residence because of that. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, he was hesitant because he didn't want to do it because he was ashamed because that's another thing for men. They're ashamed to talk about that. So what I did is that I suggested refer him to a therapist, and I said talk to her or to him if you rather have a therapist, a male. So he found a male therapist, and then he was able, after a few therapies, he was able to come to my office and hire me to start the process. But in the beginning, it was very hard. In the end, right now, he's a U.S. citizen. He became a U.S. citizen last year. I was very happy. He's just, I thought that that was great for him. And he was very humble. He didn't want to hurt her in any way. And so I was very happy that men also can get that status.
Stay tuned for the next episode of No Holds Barred.